We have a word for women who want something from men: gold digger. It's a word that's meant to shame a woman for expecting stability and provision. But we never thought about the person who wants everything from a woman except responsibility. Not her money, her labor, emotional labor, domestic labor, sexual labor, psychological labor, administrative labor, all of the work that keeps life running. Today, we name that. Prose is power, wit is weaponry. Here, I name it, I shame it, and I speak plain truth to covert cultural lies. I'm Kiki Bryant, and this is Clapbacktivism, a podcast where I clap back with clarity. We live in a culture that is very comfortable with assuming women's motives and very uncomfortable with examining men's actual behavior. In a patriarchy, that is not accidental, that is structural. Because if attention stays on what women might be doing wrong, no one has to confront what men are constantly allowed to do. One of the oldest tools in the system is the myth of the gold digger. It is a story repeated so often that people stopped asking whether it reflects reality. And today, I'm going to ask you a different question. What if the problem is not greedy women chasing money, but rather a culture that refuses to see how much labor women are already giving away for free? So, what is a labor digger? A labor digger is a term that I coined to describe a man, typically in a cishet relationship, who benefits from the unpaid emotional, physical, and mental labor of a partner while offering little to no reciprocal support. Rather than contributing equally to the relationship, a labor digger expects their partner to act as a maid, manager, therapist, or caregiver while they provide minimum labor themselves. A labor digger isn't defined by money. He's defined by access to a woman's time, care, planning, her emotional regulation, her domestic work, her sexual availability, her psychological support, all of the invisible systems that keep daily life functioning. And the defining feature is simple. He does not experience this as labor. It's considered invisible. It's considered normal, which means that he does not feel the urgency to reciprocate, the pressure to change, or the responsibility to repair that inherent imbalance. Because in the story that we all inherited, this is simply what women are for. Now, let's circle back to the gold digger myth. The real problem with the gold digger narrative is not that gold diggers are rare, because they are. It is the story that pretends that gold diggers are not working. Even in relationships that people view as transactional, those women are still performing labor. Being beautiful is labor. Staying beautiful is labor. Being social is labor. Being good at being social is labor. Being sexual is labor. Helping someone emotionally regulate is labor. Being a status symbol is labor. Models make money because it is labor. These are the same kinds of labor that men routinely pay strangers to provide. And in many cases, these women are also contributing domestic, emotional, or organizational labor that stabilizes the men's daily life. So the contradiction is clear. When men pay for these services outside of a relationship, it is recognized as work, even sex work. But when a woman provides the same labor inside of a relationship and expects provision in return, it's framed as deceitful. This is not a moral judgment. It's an economic distortion. The gold digger myth survives because it erases women's labor and it protects men from being seen as beneficiaries of it. Underlying idea is the same, whether you are referring to labor diggers or to gold diggers. The underlying idea is that women do not deserve compensation for what they do. Gold diggers, at least in the way that the patriarchy understands them, do not exist. But labor diggers are very, very fucking real. Labor diggers do not require wealth, they require entitlement and normalization, and both of those things exist in abundance. Labor diggers thrive where women are socialized to nurture automatically, where men are excused from emotional competence, where they are allowed to weaponize incompetence, where domestic imbalance is just called personality difference and it is just simply assumed that women are better at it. Invisible labor is difficult to measure, and what cannot be measured is easily exploited. That is why naming matters. Language turns private exhaustion into something visible enough to confront. What we can name, we can confront. What we can confront, we can change. The cost of this extraction. Unpaid labor does not disappear. It does not exist in a vacuum. It accumulates across bodies and it accumulates across years. It shows up for women as delayed careers. It shows up for women as reduced lifetime earnings. It shows up for women as chronic stress. It shows up for women as emotional depletion. It shows up as resentment. And it shows up as lives organized around someone else's leisure. It shows up as your time being seen as less valuable, as your labor being seen as less valuable. Once something is visible, you gain a choice that invisibility never allowed. That is the work here. Clarity. Because clarity is what systems fear most. This was Clapbacktivism. If this episode gave you language for something you've been feeling but couldn't name, you can find more of my work on my Substack at Uppity Negress, my YouTube channel, Kiki the Uppity Negress, and on Threads, Uppity_Negress_. On the next episode, we'll talk about ghosting, rejection, and the difference between hurt and harm. I'll see you there.